Okay. And yeah, we can start. It's 8:01. Uh-oh, I'm hearing weird things. Mute other people. There we go. So, oh yeah, hi everybody. And people are coming in on the chat and stuff. And so this is our sort of monthly pro call. And just so Jamar knows, we have people who are studying graphic novels and people who have been through some of our programs and have been around a while, and people who are sort of a little bit newcomers and stuff, but everybody's interested in learning how it's done and what it means to be a pro and what it means to be not on your phones all the time and actually like drawing those pictures and all that stuff. So anyway, so that's why we're here. And to everybody, I'm super excited that Jamar's here. I forgot San Diego is next week, so I'm glad you're not like busily packing or something like that.
Oh yeah, well it's actually tomorrow.
It starts on Wednesday?
Yeah, well, preview night is tomorrow, but I'm not going to preview night. We could talk about that too.
Sure, I'd love to hear about any of that stuff. Anyway, I'm gonna let Jamar introduce himself. He's got a bunch of great books and some material, podcasts, and other great stuff. And I'm just really glad we connected last month or a couple months ago. And I'm really excited to hear what we like to do on these pro calls is hear your career story and hear like how do you start when you just sort of know, like, you know, when you know you want to draw things and you know what you want to tell stories, what next? And then what next? And then after that, what next? And then what next? You know?
Yeah.
How does that work? You know, and it works differently for everybody. And that's why we like to hear individual stories. So, all right, Jamar, I'm going to shut up. But for everybody online, I assume there'll be some time for Q&A. But if you have anything you want to say in the chat while Jamar's speaking, that's cool too. And I'll try and I don't know, just navigate the chat and all that stuff. So anyway, Jamar, welcome. Thank you for being here. And yeah. And all right, everybody. So here we go.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate it. And I hope everybody's well tonight. I hope everybody can kind of like, it feels tense in here to me, Tom. I don't know if it's just me. The energy feels a little weird.
Maybe everybody should unmute for 1 second and just go. That worked.
All right. Yeah, I feel better already.
Okay.
Thanks again, Tom, for having me on. And thank you guys for spending your evening with me. I hope that you get something out of this. If it's not informative, that hopefully it'll at least be interesting and entertaining. My name is Jamar Nicholas. I'm up to, maybe a month ago, I'm a full-time author. I am what's my new title? It changes with the wind. I'm an author illustrator. I think that's what they like to call us in the book space now.
Yeah.
But I'm still a dyed-in-the-wool cartoonist, and I feel like I'm talking to my peers here, so I don't have to go too much into the etymology of those terms, so we can just kind of get the brass tacks. One of the things that a lot of the things I'm going to talk about tonight while we're here together is a little bit of my journey. Some of you, maybe a lot of you, have never heard of me, and that's okay. But just to kind of start off the conversation, I've been in the comic book industry for 25 something odd years. So I've been around, and as Tom knows, the road is never linear. It's very kind of like an EKG meter. It's all up and down and all over the place. So I prepared a PowerPoint today. Yeah, is that Parker? Parker the dog? Is that what I heard?
Stop it.
I have a poodle. I have a poodle too that likes to talk. So I'm pro dog. I have a PowerPoint I created tonight, which goes over a pretty broad channel of my career. It's not everything, and it's funny for any of you that have been around or at least been at this for a long time. You start to feel after a while that you've forgotten things that you've drawn more than the things that you have in front of you. Like if somebody says, well, what do you do? And you kind of think of 2 or 3 really specific things that kind of pop up to you in your mind, or even if you're a professional or you do work in a kind of like commercial space, people go, oh right, you're the person that did the billboards downtown, right? And that kind of winds up being all you are to some people. So I like to think of myself, and all of us are like icebergs. And I'm sure you've heard the iceberg analogy. Like people usually just see the very tippy top of your story, but there's so much underneath. So I'm going to do some diving into my iceberg thing. So I'm going to share my screen with this PowerPoint, and I hope this works. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so I always feel like I have to preface these things by saying, part of my job as a cartoonist is to sell myself, to sell my work, to tell people about what I do and how I do it and why you may want to hire me and all this kind of stuff, all those kind of things. So I don't really feel like talking about myself or you talk about yourself as a bad thing. I'm sure you've all been in spaces where you're like, yo, I got to get on this TikTok to promote my stuff, or I got to do these things so people know who I am. And there's always somebody in your circles like, man, you talk about yourself a lot. You must be really vain. All you do is talk about your stuff or show. Actually, this is funny. We had some family over last weekend, and I don't want to give away my whole PowerPoint, but I started handing out these books to like my relatives. They're like, oh, here's my newest book. And one of my little cousins says, here he goes again, always promoting something. And I'm like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. Oh. Isn't that what you should be doing? But anyway, I digress. So I'm going to kind of just give you like some quick snapshots of a little bit of who I am, how I got here, what I do, et cetera, et cetera. So I am a native Philadelphian. Yeah, West Philadelphia, the whole thing, it's real. We're not going to do the Fresh Prince song, as I've heard it way too much, but I'm a Philadelphian. If you follow my career and know about me, I sprinkle Philadelphianisms into all my stuff. I say John way too much. I like to match my clothes, like all this stuff is a real thing. And what's great about this point of my career is that, and this is probably, it sounds like it might be the first thing, but it's probably the last thing. After all these years, I'm finally kind of recognized in my own city. I'm not sure where everybody is from, but Philadelphia is a hard town to scratch through. It's kind of a place where you have to be super amazing, excellent for people to go, oh, okay, he's all right. So if you kind of even think about all of the really famous celebrities that have come from Philadelphia, there's a lot of people that have come from here, and usually people go, oh yeah, whatever, he's okay. Kevin Bacon, he's all right. He all right. So I get asked to do things in public spaces with Philadelphia as a background. So this is a panel that I was at a couple of years ago at the Free Library of Philadelphia. Some of you may not know, but Philadelphia was the birthplace of the Free Library. So if you've ever been to Philly, the giant library down on the Parkway near the Rocky Steps, you see, I brought the Philly stuff back, is where the main branch of the Free Library is. It's a fantastic space. And they started doing Comic-Cons in there. They're still very kind of like not that well received because people are still kind of glomming onto the idea about graphic novels and comics as real literature. I'm sure you've heard that story before. But just being able to be asked to be in these spaces is great for me, and I'm surrounded by some other people. That guy on the right who's kind of smirking and looking at the microphone runs a comic shop on South Street. If any of you've ever been to Philly, Atomic Comics is a great shop. I'm not going to talk this much on every slide, but I just want to get you started here. And also, if people have questions while we start going through this, I would love to answer them if Tom just tells people. Here I am at one of the Philadelphia Comic Cons. I think this was Wizard World. If any of you are familiar with that, that's kind of dead and gone now. That's been bought out by another company. And I'm here with my team. I have a staff. I'll say that very modestly. That young lady who's smiling is my assistant, Sandra. Sandra's very important to me, and I'll kind of go into mentorship and apprenticeship and things like that that are really important in my practice later on. But at this comic book convention, I brought her along, and she kind of manned the table, so I can be a star and not have to look down at my lap and draw and fiddle with money, because I'm horrible with that. And we could talk about that also. Maybe one of my first bullet points of the night, I'll try to give you some pro tips as we go through this, is that if you are trying to do this stuff on any type of scale and you feel like there are things that you aren't good at, find somebody to help you with it. It's really not as hard as you may think. A lot of people put things into their mind really early on. It's like, oh, I wish I had some help. Oh, I wish I had an assistant. I wish I had, like, ask your daughter to help you put stuff in the van, you know. It could be as easy as that. Or maybe, you know, your mother who loves to talk your ear off, have her call the bookstores in your neighborhood to set something up. So anyway, that's that. So let me try to explain this picture. So a couple of minutes ago, I talked about how I just became a full-time author. My day job for a long time was that I was a administrator and a curator at a university right outside of Philadelphia, where I ran the art department as the staff. I was the staff of a department, which is a pretty tough job to do all by yourself. And I also managed the art gallery. We had a really prestigious art gallery. So I found out a long time ago that you have to kind of make your own gravy. You kind of have to create your own circumstances a lot. So I wanted to show this space. This was the interior design studio inside the campus, which kind of, the interior design program was liquidated at some point. They just stopped having that as a major, and this room just sat there. And then in the summer, nobody's there. So I asked the department chair a couple of years ago, can I use this? And as everybody's rushing to get out the door for the summer, she was like, I don't care, do whatever you want. So Sandra and I moved in. So this is around 2016, I took over this space and created this. This was my summer studio. I even called it a residency on things, because who's going to stop me? So Sandra and I moved in, and I finished my Leon Protector of the Playground book in the space. It was a giant cavernous space, and I learned some things about myself. One of the main things I learned about myself is that, obviously, to everybody, space is a premium. You may not have a studio in your house or your apartment or your whatever you live in. You may have a table next to the dryer in the basement, or you may have to clean off the kitchen table before dinner because that's where you're working, and put that stuff somewhere and bring it back out. I found out a couple of things about myself when I was able to kind of unpack my head into this giant space, that I had a lot in there. That was the first thing. And the second thing is that I think I'm more of a visual person than I thought I was. I don't know if you're note takers or you're planners, or you have like lots of things that you try to capture information in. But, and I'll show you in this next panel. There was a giant homosode wall in the space where I was able to just stand there every day and just kind of look up at it. Or I'd sit on a stool and just look at it. And I could, these are 11 by 17 artboards on this wall. That's how big this wall is. And I could put a whole chapter of my graphic novel on this wall, and, as I call it, zoom out. I could zoom out and kind of see if this thing was flowing correctly. Maybe I need another 2 pages inside 17 and 19. Maybe this is too much, maybe this is too little. I could basically Tetris this work in a whole different way I could if I was just kind of trying to make this thing happen in my head. So I don't know if any of you have ever had that thing where it's like, you know, I wish I could just put it on the ground and step back and look at it, however you process things. Or I needed that space to, and I was very fortunate to have the space. I don't have it anymore. And I learned a lot about myself from it. But, and if you can see, I don't think I can circle things, but on the right hand wall kind of facing us in the corner, I have these grids, which are kind of like my layout pages for the book, where there's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of like 9 things to a page. That's like zooming in really close, but being able to zoom out, I could make a better flowing narrative by being able to have this space. I'm not exactly sure why this is in here. Okay, so a reason I put this in here is that on top of being your own boss as a cartoonist and going to conventions and going to exhibitions and trying to do all this stuff and make money, you also kind of turn into a personality, for I guess, for lack of a better term. So every time I'm in public, I kind of have to be, and I don't want to say this like I'm not a nice person, but it's like I have to be willing to be accessible to people. So a buddy of mine came by and was like, hey, here's my dragon mascot. Can you take a picture of this and I'll put it on the thing? Okay. You know, and I guess being a good sport is what I'm saying, which while we're going through all of these processes in our heads about doing great work, or I can never get the arm right on this page, or, oh man, I need better brushes, all that stuff. I'm trying to get at that there's a whole other column of being a professional that has nothing to do with drawing. And that's maybe like a public facing thing, but just being able to network, be accessible, be approachable, and kind of just to have a decent disposition will do so much more for your career than just being the best artist in the room. I know a lot of people who are brilliant cartoonists, but you don't want to have a cup of coffee with them because they're horrible to be around. You know what I'm saying? So I would rather be the nicest guy who can't draw feet very well and get further in my career than being a master illustrator who no one can stand, if that makes sense. Okay, so I was just talking about Ric Flair, if any of you guys know who that old guy is in the middle. That's the Nature Boy Ric Flair, pro wrestling legend and champion. I put this picture in here a while ago is because when I was growing up, I didn't really think that I could be a cartoonist for real, as the kids say, FR. One of the main reasons is one, I never knew anybody who did that as a career. I also didn't know that that was something I could do because I was a Black kid. Because there's no role models or anybody I knew who did this in real life. So luckily for me, since I've been around so long, I've been able to network and make friends with and collaborate with a lot of really amazing people of color from all different spectrums. And this is a little side hustle group I'm in called the Black Horsemen. There's no TM on that. So the guy on the left that I'm standing behind, that's Anthony Retgazer, who was a comic book writer, and he also was an ex-pro wrestler. So he has a very interesting career. You can go follow him. And the guy on the right of Rick is Jamal Igle. Jamal is a really accomplished mainstream comic book artist. He's worked for Marvel, DC, and all the big guys. And the guy behind Rick is Jerry Gaylord, another animator and creative. And it's kind of good for everybody to see people of other colors doing this stuff because it's very inspiring and can also help people who think, you know, they couldn't be in the space I am to aspire to that. I can't tell you how many times somebody's come up to me and go, oh, I didn't know you were Black. Like, it seems like something you wouldn't say out loud to somebody, but it happens all the time. And, you know, especially with my last name, doesn't seem like a Black people name, Nicholas, you know, anything. And that's a whole other thing. But, you know, the representation is super important to me. I put these two images up here because this on the left was my first headshot for one of my graphic novels, Fist, Stick, Knife, Gun. And this goes back to kind of like your media presence. This one book that I did that I'm going to talk about was a very serious, heavy-handed, heavy-hearted book. And I felt like, even though I'm a pretty, you know, jocular guy, I needed to kind of have a serious mood to how I was carrying this content. I think, you know, even controlling your image to that degree is something I've said to a lot of young people who just kind of use Instagram and all those things to just put whatever and everything on. The further you get along in your career where you're like, oh, well, I think I want to do this for real, you need to start thinking about how your presence is being managed on the internet. So for some of you young people who might have, you know, pictures with you at the club, like putting them back, you might want to get rid of those. I'm just saying, or have an art account or something like that that is a little separate than from, you know, Fun Bobby who goes out on Friday nights. You may not want to have those two people in the same space. And also, so the image on the right is one of my newer pictures from when I started doing my kids' work, where I didn't come from a place where you smile a lot. You didn't ever smile in pictures. That was like a no-no. You ever seen a guy's driver's license? Nobody's smiling. You got to do the most like mean mug shot you can make. But this other picture over here showed where my head is at now and a lot of the joy that I'm feeling at this place in my career. So I wanted that to come out in this headshot. And also when people see this or they want to book me, or they go, "Oh wow, he seems like a fun person. Let's give him a call." There's so much information in the optics. It's really important. All right, I'm going to try to push this along. This is my very first professional work. I did freelance work and things in Philadelphia before this. I had a bunch of comic strips that never really went anywhere before this. But this is my first self-published comic book, the Jamar Chronicles, which I believe has a street date of 1998, 97, 98, something like that. I was self-taught. At the time, there weren't a lot of programs in the States to teach you how to be a cartoonist. That has totally changed now, right? There's a lot of people who are like, I'm twice their age, who have master's degrees in sequential illustration. I applaud you, but I guess I'm old school, right, Tom? You just kind of, I learned it on the streets. So I basically taught myself how to self-publish a book. This is pre-internet, really, or the internet wasn't the same as it is now, where there was before the search engines. You couldn't just type into a search bar, "How do you make comic books?" I had to figure it out the old way. I went to the library. I have a stack of books over here on how to, most of them are just business books. There's not, I have one how to make comic books book, and that was a rare thing to have at the time. So a lot of my background getting to this place to this space is marketing, business, how to sell a product, all those things that have nothing to do with drawing. We went back to that again, but I don't want to railroad you too much. But this is kind of like the spine of my career. Even in the covers, like real early Photoshop. Like I knew a guy who had Photoshop on a computer in a basement somewhere at their college, that I went in and just tried to make this thing happen on a Sunday. Luckily, you guys aren't in that space anymore, but these are some of my upbringing stories. So I'm going to push this along a little bit. So from my early foray into self-publishing, I started going to conventions. I figured out really early that you had to network to get anywhere. And I think there's a little difference between networking and social climbing. I think they're two different columns. And, you know, I think being kind of like a real person and being kind of like, I guess, true to your personality, I think is super important. So I just wanted to know everybody who did comics. Like, it was like, yo, how did, like, Tom and I are kind of new friends, but I kind of surprised Tom because I knew about his work. He was like, wait, what? I was like, oh, Tom, that's amazing. I love Hutch Owens. And he's like, okay. I wanted to know everybody who was doing this because I came from a place where no one did this. So all of us were kind of like unicorns, all in a field, like, you know, prancing. I want to know how you made your comics. What printer did you use? What is this paper? How'd you get this printed? Did you screen printed this? Where'd you find a screen? Like, we were kind of in this weird class where people were makers in a different way than they may be now, because it was so new. Everybody had a different way of getting to the finish line. Like, some people burrowed from underground and crossed the tape. Some people ran really fast. Some people had a jetpack. Everybody got to the end in a different fashion. So it was really important that I knew as many people as possible. So a little later on in my career, I started doing other things. I think I'm a decent writer. My buddy Mike Manley, who is a long-term Marvel and DC artist, Started self-publishing in the early 90s, and he also created a magazine called Draw! Magazine. I am still a columnist for this magazine where I do tool and tech reviews, and I also interview other creators. It's another way that I network, and more on a grander scale. I get, so imagine if somebody said to you, who in the industry would you love to talk to? Oh man, I have a laundry list. All right, well, let's contact them. What? You could do that? So the more I kind of dug into this universe, and I found out that a lot of people were just, if you just ask them, they'll probably say yes. So the walls are like not as thick as you might have thought they were. So this was a cover of Brian Lee O'Malley. If you're familiar with Brian, he's the creator of Scott Pilgrim, which has kind of turned into a little bit of a cultural phenomenon. It's coming back around. I think they have a cartoon at Netflix that's coming out soon for Scott Pilgrim. I know the video game that's got re-released, blah, blah, blah. But, I was talking to Brian before he was such a household name, and became really good friends with him. And then later on the right, where we started podcasting, I just called him up. I was like, yo, Mal, you want to be on the thing? He's like, yeah, man, that's cool. Now I'm at a point where people go, how do you know these people? You know what I'm saying? Because people may not know me, but so one of my nicknames I like to call myself the Kevin Bacon of comic books. The 6 degrees are real. We've been around long enough that we know all of these people, and it all makes sense. Tom, how am I doing on time? Am I talking too much?
Awesome. No, it's awesome.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back to that Kevin Bacon bit in a bit.
Yeah. You said bacon bit. I saw what you did. So I also teach and taught. This is from a catalog from Moore College of Art. If you're familiar with Moore College of Art, is one of the only all-female art and design schools in the country. It just happens to be in Philadelphia. So I taught there for a long time. I think for #diversity, I wound up in a lot of their marketing. So here I am, looking a little young in this picture, doing the obligatory point at the screen, help as a student photo. You know that? Oh, just over there, you just click that, and then we take the picture. So the reason I included this was just for people to kind of see that there's so many spokes in the wheel, right? This is almost to the degree that people talk about side gig culture now, or side hustles, or however you want to call it. My intent as a young person was always, I wanted to make money as an artist. And I just kind of tuned in from there. Like I teach because when I was a kid, no one taught. So I'm going to fill in that space. So I do that. I also do this. I also write. I'm also this. I'm also that. And all of that stuff kind of makes me a fuller person, and to put me in where I am now, if that makes sense. So here's Jamar teaching. This is at Moore for the Summer Institute. I used to teach a lot at Moore, to the point where people thought that I was a full-time professor there. And this was another space where I just had this giant classroom, and I could just just swing for the fences and teach students a lot of things that they probably hadn't thought about. Up until that point, if you were taking a cartooning class or something, it was very rudimentary. It was very, hey, you like SpongeBob? Let's draw SpongeBob. Okay, it's time for snack. And it was, I'm like, there's like really no education there. So even if you could see behind me, it's like, okay, this is what a Bristol board is like. It's going to be 11 by 17. You rule it out here. One of the first lessons we did is they got a stack of paper and they had to rule out the pages. Well, when do we get to draw? No, we draw next week. You just have to learn how to be familiar with the tools. I'm really old school drill sergeant, so just being comfortable with the material was important before we draw SpongeBob for an afternoon. So that's also a big part of me. And as my name started to grow, I started to get asked to do more things. This is me at PCAD, which is the Pennsylvania College of Art and Design out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful school. They're great people. It's a lovely town. I think I could live there. Where I did a 24-hour residency. They did a 24-hour comic book festival that I think that's still a thing, right, Tom? Do they still do 24-hour comic book day? They did this for all of the students in the program, and you couldn't leave the building. It was kind of like a challenge, right? So it's like 4 a.m. I'm sitting in this room like, bro, I'm so tired. I don't know. I don't know how you guys are doing this. But I kind of went from room to room and just checked in on students as they were working on their things. So that was a really cool thing for me. And now I'm like in the space where like, oh, wow, this is great. And people are kind of calling on me as an expert just because I've been in the mix and making myself known and being present. So there I am with all the students. And a couple of these guys are in the business now. I think Kyle Brightbill is in there. He's a great colorist. It's a fantastic group of people. And I suggest if you have the means to try to mentor, if you can, or even if you feel like you're not at a space of your career where you can do that, maybe you can be a apprentice of somebody else. I think that that teaching line is really important in the development of an artist. Okay, so now we're going to get into some programming. Myself and these 2 other cats over there, we were doing a very early podcast. This is maybe in 2009 when you would ask somebody, hey, do you watch or you listen to podcasts? No, what's a podcast? Right, remember that time? Also, do you remember when people said, hey, you know, there's this thing called electronic mail. What's that? No, you get a letter, but it's on your computer. I don't know what you're talking about. So myself and these guys, this is John Gallagher on the left and my buddy Rich Faber in the middle. We came together and started doing a comic book industry business podcast, almost like a click and clack for any of you old timers out there, but just about comics. And it wasn't from a fan perspective. And what I mean by that is who would win in a fight, the Hulk or Wolverine? Like, we don't care about that stuff. Is, you know what, now you need a computer to be in this business. How does that change for some of the old timers who grew up doing everything traditionally? Now you have to have a Cintiq and Photoshop and all these things. How are you surviving? So every week we would have a different topic and talk to other creators. It got really popular. We had sponsors. It was nuts. And it really kind of, it scratched the itch with me that I realized I love sharing information, and I also like running my mouth, if you haven't figured that out by now. That has transformed over time into the new thing I'm doing, Pencil to Pencil, which is kind of an offshoot of Mike Manley's Draw magazine, and that's Mike on the left with the no hair. On the right of me, that's Brett Blevins. Brett is Mike's best friend and also another comic book legend. If any of you guys are old Marvel heads, Mike co-created Darkhawk at Marvel. Brett has done everything. He drew New Mutants for a long time, Sleepwalker. You know, their list goes on. They're fantastic guys, and I'm really good friends with them. So we, because now print matter is facing its own extinction in a way. Where, like, when's the last time you bought a magazine? you know what I'm saying? So my man over there bought a magazine. Like, yeah, I just did that. Yeah, let's see it. Yeah, nice. I love it. So we figured, now that the internet is accessible and like speeds are quick enough, let's try to do some sort of kind of like a video version of the magazine. So that's what Pencil to Pencil has been. And you can just go to youtube.com and you can type in Pencil to Pencil. You'll see several interviews, and that's where that Brian Lee O'Malley interview came from. And it also raises my profile. See, it all comes back around. It's all self-serving in a very odd way. If anybody has any questions, I can answer them while we're going on. And this is me. I actually drew something. We've hardly talked about art yet. So this is kind of like, this was at a solo exhibition I had at Arcadia, which was cool. That's this college that I worked at, where I'd been there so long, and people started to figure, oh wow, wait, you're the same guy. The world started to merge, and then I'm starting to get kind of known on campus as I'm sure some of you have had this, you're the art person, or you're the cartooning kid, or you're the one that draws the big feet guys on everything. So I started getting some recognition on campus, and these opportunities opened up to kind of bring these two worlds together. So I started doing gallery shows with my cartooning, And this was at the reception where I'm signing posters and things like that. So this kind of ties into where I'm at now, where part of all of this stuff, again, along with the cartooning, that's all fantastic, but being in the public eye, I think is super important, especially in the world we live in now. Like I would be hard pressed to say that you could be a successful cartoonist and not have a public face. You know, it is possible. I'm not saying it isn't, but I think it would be disingenuous to say that's not important. I'm not saying everybody needs to be on TikTok and all that stuff, but it helps. So this is me getting interviewed at Black Comic Book Festival at the Schomburg Institute in Harlem, New York, where people are very excited to see Black people making stuff, because we didn't know you guys were doing this. Even the public doesn't know that this is a thing. So anytime that I can be out there and kind of promoting my work, and it's very humbling and exciting to me. Another side of what I do is I'm a huge advocate for kids reading comics. I'm part of a group called Kids Love Comics. This is my buddy Chris Mariano holding up the backpack with the flag on it. We're a really strong fixture at a lot of East Coast comic book conventions, where we have a section of the comic book convention that is just for all ages or kid-friendly content. If any of you, have any of you been to a comic book convention? If you want to raise your hand or put your digital hand or thumb up. I think you would, maybe if you don't think about it, it's really rare to go to a comic book convention and easily find stuff that you can give your kid, which seems kind of like counterproductive to this world we're in. It's like, hey, yeah, and if to that point, I've seen more people go up to people and go, hey, is this safe for my kid? Or hey, can I give this to my kid? And a lot of them go, I don't know if Blood Claw is what you want to be handing your kid, or Death Rattle. I don't know if I don't think that's the right content. So we're trying to make it easy, and we also bring in networking again. We also have a really strong relationship with other creators who do kids content, middle grade, all ages, picture books, puppeteers, animators, all of that kind of stuff. So they all are kind of in an island around us. And it's a one-stop shop for the convention. You can write to us. We also do programming. Behind our island, we have workshop tables set up, and you can take a class with your kid. And I do a couple of classes because the teaching came back. You see how it all comes back around? And while I'm teaching my lessons, I'll give little tips to the parents, like, hey, you know what's great for your kid is, instead of saying that's nice, dear, and putting it on the refrigerator, why don't you engage them and ask them what this is? Hey, what is that? Oh, that's the space pirate, and he does that. Okay, well, can you draw the ship that the space pirate is in charge of? Oh, yeah, cool. And now they're engaged, and they feel like you're actually paying attention versus just like patting them on the head. I call those refrigerator parents. That's nice, dear. We're just gonna put that over there. So that's a really important part of this whole mix to me. And also a big reason I do kids content now. All right, I'm gonna try to blaze through some of this. And there's my assistant, Sandra. This was another assistant of mine, Yaya. From my time at the school, I was able to, because I had work study students, I was able to train these students. And if you'd find some kids that really had their head on straight, once in a while I'd ask them if they'd like to work in the studio. A lot of them say yes, and they realize it is actual work, and then they don't want to do it anymore. It happens all the time. But Sandra's still around. She's a good egg. And this is more promotion. This is the thing that kind of bit me to do kids' books. I did a short-lived series at Tokyo Pop. If any of you manga readers remember Tokyo Pop, they were trying to do a gateway chapter book series for kids to get them into wanting to read manga. So I didn't create this. A cool writer named Annie Auerbach created this series of these two boys who would go on adventures. And in the middle of the book, it was mostly prose, chapter style. And then there would be, spreads of comic book pages that it would draw. So it was kind of like a really easy primer into learning how to read a comic page, and kind of having good content that was accessible to younger readers. And I really love this gig. I was like, this almost doesn't feel like work. this is awesome. And it kind of primed me into wanting to do more of that stuff. So that was a really important part of my process. It didn't last long. And Tokyo Pop kind of like went down the drain. I think they're coming back around, but it's a very shaky bridge that all that stuff is on these days. Tom, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I got lots of questions, especially Tokyo Pop. They were really, they were huge for a little while. Was it Tokyo? I mean, I don't want to derail you, but was it Tokyo Pop that had some really kind of crazy contracts for a while? I think it was.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But
yeah,
we can talk about that later.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I could touch on it really quick. So another thing that I think happened, I think there's a hand over there. I see. Hold on a second. Leo, did you have a question? I see your hand up. Maybe not. I'm not sure.
Could have been from the Comic-Con question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just had my hand raised about Comic-Con and I didn't put it down. Comic-Con is great.
Pencils down, hands down. Okay, we'll get back to that. But yeah, real quick. I just kind of, you get a snapshot of the stuff I've been talking about and just kind of like slowly going up these stairs, right? I can tell you very easily that almost everything that I've done, somewhere in the back of my head, I felt like this is it, right? That kind of like, this is going to be it. This is the one. It's almost like speed dating or something, like, this is going to be it. Oh, we broke up. Oh man, I got to start over again. But it's been a really slow progression. But I've also seen as the comic book industry has become more kind of like a meat market for other groups of people, say Hollywood, say screenwriters who think they need to get a comic book made to sell a pitch. Like, there's a lot of people who now come to Comic-Con looking for other things for different reasons. And for a long time, a lot of creators are just happy for the attention. We used to, it's changed a lot, but there are a lot of just happy to be here types behind the comic book table. So a lot of people would fall for really bad deals because no one ever offered them a deal before, right? It's almost, you think of, maybe you wouldn't think of this, like a young Queen Latifah or something like that, who was 16 years old and had a record contract and goes home and goes, "Mom, I just signed this record contract." "What? Did anybody look at that?" "No." "What? Why would I read it?" You know what I'm saying? It's like that kind of naivety, that naiveness that we all kind of have because we're just happy to have interest, right? So if somebody comes up to you and go like, "Hey, we love your work and we would love to give you a coffee mug and a flyer and sign this here in a box of Newports, and now you can work for us and we'll publish your stuff." "Yeah, man, that's cool." And then you find out it's a bum deal because you go on the internet and find out that they went out of business and now you can't publish your own work anymore because you signed some really crazy contract, So I guess to maybe talk to what Tom was about to talk about is, I think there's a really thin line between being paranoid about your career. I know a lot of people who get stuck in the mud because they spend all the time going, "I don't want to show anybody my work because I don't want them to steal it. Do I have to copyright all my stuff because I don't want anybody to steal it? Don't look at my sketchbook because you're going to steal it." Like, that public facing stuff I've been talking about is just kind of like a part and parcel of being in this business. You have to show people your work so people know you have work to show. You can't keep everything to the vest because no one will know who you are. So there's a lot of risk reward there, especially with the new internet we live in, the new world we live in. And I call it, you ready for this? I'm so brilliant. Joking. We live in a right-click save as world. The younger you are, the more I'm sure it's nothing to you to just swipe something off the internet because you saw an image. "Oh, I'm going to screenshot that. Bloop, bloop. It's mine now. I've saved as JPEG. Bloop, bloop. It's mine now." To the point where people don't even know who drew things anymore. It almost doesn't matter. Like that meme culture, all that stuff. Don't get me started. So the more the rules have changed, the more the creative has to learn how to protect themselves and also be vulnerable at the same time. It's a dance. I will continue. Okay, so now I've been doing stuff for a while. People started to know who I am. I started getting asked to be in these kind of like reference table books. So I get asked to be in this tome called the Black Comics. Basically, it was a who's who of Black comic book artists. It was almost like a snapshot of the time period. I think this is from 2011, 12. This is out of print. Wild enough, I saw it on eBay going for like $1,500. I wish I had more of them because I would sell them, but they didn't make enough of those, and now this is pretty sought after. But more to me, I was starting to feel like I was being recognized in the industry. So I'm going to bounce through this real quick. So one of my big graphic novel projects was called Fist Stick Knife Gun. If anyone saw this documentary called Waiting for Superman, this is from like 2010, 2011, where people started to really dig into how are our kids being educated? What's up with these charter schools? People started to really kind of dig into the whole kind of education pie. And this guy, Jeff Canada, who was now still the president, ran the Harlem Children's Zone in New York. He's a really important guy. He's a children's advocate and an educator. And he wrote this really important book called Fist Stick Knife Gun, maybe 15 years before I met him. What makes this so interesting is that, and now we're in a wave of memoirs where people talk about their violent upbringings and kind of how they escaped it. No one had heard the story before this. So this was the cover to the prose book. And my profile had raised to the point people started asking me to do gigs. I didn't know who they were. My name got out there. So this publisher emailed me and said, hey, we would love to do an adaptation of Fist Stick Knife Gun. We want to do a graphic novel. You know about graphic novels, right? I mean, that's the time period we're in. Like you can trip over a graphic novel walking down the street to the subway now, but back then, which wasn't that long ago, it was still just this really kind of like granular thing people had just heard about. And they even said things like, oh, well, we read this book called Fun Home. Fun Home's on the New York Times bestseller list. Can you do a Fun Home? Like it was just kind of like an ask. Okay, I'll draw this book and it'll be on the New York, you know what I'm saying? Like it was a little unrealistic. So I took this gig. I couldn't say no. It sounded great. I connected with the material because even being from Philly, see, the Philly thing came back again. I grew up the same way this young man did in the 50s, in the 60s, and the 70s. And we don't need to talk about the whole violence thing of what's going on out in the streets and how people shoot each other and all that stuff. That's what this book's about. And this book is old now. I find that they've been teaching this book in high schools and social justice classes in colleges across the country. I'm very fortunate that I get a royalty check every 6 months from this book. People told me when this book came out, you're never going to sniff a royalty check, Tom Hart. Don't even think about it. But I could buy a hoagie with it. It's not crazy, but it's something. But it's sad and also exciting, and then sad again that this is an important book. It says something about our culture that something like this still needs to be talked about. So I'm going to just go through the process real quick. This is my line art getting ready for the cover. I wanted to use the same kind of logo treatment that the first book had to call back to the original, but also for people to understand that this wasn't the same book that they may have read. This is a different version. I always like process stuff, so I have some shots of this. The reason I put this in here, and this is of young Jeff. This is supposed to be in the 50s, where back then kids were into cowboys and Indians. That was the thing. A lot of the entertainment at the time was cowboy flicks and things like that, and kids played bang bang cowboys and Indians, and that was kind of a thing. But also, this kid doesn't look that different from a young kid you might see today. The fashion's a little off, but there's not really a big difference. So one thing that I really like to get across in my art is, and I feel like I'm a emotional storyteller. I like to lead with empathy. So even you look at the eyes, which is like a Charlie Brown eye, it's basically like a comma, right? I feel like there's a lot of information inside this kid's face. Like, can you put yourself in the shoes of this kid who looks like kind of like a scared boy, but also defiant at the same time? That's a lot for just a circle, like a black circle, right? To talk about this really makes me excited about the power of narrative storytelling, or visual storytelling, or sequential storytelling. You have so much control over the emotions of a reader. So I think that's a really powerful tool I think some people overlook. And a long time ago, what was that, a long time ago, somebody came up to me and was like, "Oh my God, Jamar, I read Fist and Knife Gun," and I cried and I cried, and I was like, yes, nice, I got him. I felt bad afterwards, but like, yeah, I wanted you to feel something, so that's fantastic. So with this adaptation process, I took some shots of that. I wanted to show you kind of what that looked like. So I basically had to retype the whole book because they didn't have a file at the publisher. It's a whole other story. We won't get into that. But I broke this down into like a comic book language. Even though it was a prose book, it wasn't made as a comic. So I have to reimagine this as a comic. You know, a lot got cut out. I didn't add much, but it was more like I took some small moments and made them big moments, which I think is really important. And this is, remember we talked about zooming in and zooming out? This is me zooming out and laying out a chapter of the book, where the red parts are narration or caption boxes and the yellow is dialogue. And, you know, it's like with thumbnails, it kind of, if it makes sense to you, that's all that matters. If I was doing this to show my editor where they had to make notes, I'd probably do this a lot cleaner. But this, you know, this is my roadmap here. Here's another detail shot. And here's some character studies. This is of this kid. I call him Ringworm Kid. That's pretty gross. But this kid who's like a bully in the story has ringworm where his hair is falling out. And also I tried to make him kind of not look of this age, I mean of this time period. And this is another character shot of him where I started playing with the features of all the bullies. They almost have misshapen heads, all of the people that kind of cross him in the book. Like some kid's got a lemon head and some guy's got a triangle head. I'm trying to just, you know, play with shapes and also with memory too. That's a whole other thing, but we'll do that in the next workshop. And this is one of my favorite scenes. I didn't do a lot of detail shots, but in this scene, the bully meets up with Jeff, who went to the supermarket to buy a can of pork and beans for his mother. He's leaving the supermarket and this kid targets him and walks up to him and puts his arm around him. I think he's like 5 or something in this story. And goes, "Hey, do you want to be friends?" "Oh yeah, I don't have any friends." "Sure, I'll be your friend." Right? The kids. So then the kid walks him into the alley and robs him. So in this scene right here, he's putting his hand around him and he whispers in his ear, "Give me your money." And even though there's no dialogue, I feel like you're there with them. And you can kind of feel the kind of like the confusion and the terror in this kid's eyes. I don't know. I hope you can. If you can't, I didn't do my job good enough. But that's what I'm shooting for. I'm shooting for these moments where you like, even though you may never have been a little Black kid in Harlem in the 50s, that you can put yourself in this kid's shoes for a moment. Here's reference. That's a real thing. I went to New York with Jeff and took lots of photos. Here are Bobos, as we used to call them. Even Chuck Taylors were expensive back in the day. Not everybody had them. New York sports, stickball was not a thing in the neighborhood I grew up in Philly. So I just wanted to get, you know, more of a New York ambiance to what I was doing. And, you know, there's images where kids are playing in the street. What were kids playing in the street in the 50s? I have to do research. I can't make it up, especially when you're doing things that are true, right? You got to try to be as faithful to the material as you can. Here's a young man in the 50s who doesn't really look that much different from a guy sitting on the step these days. Maybe his hair, that's about it. And it also kind of shows you, it kind of plays a game with your head. Like, wow, so much time is going past, but nothing has changed. That's pretty sad, isn't it? Something to think about. There is the Bronx. The Bronx. Oh, that's a very New York thing. Was fire escapes on the front of buildings. That is not a Philadelphia thing. It's a very New York thing. This is Block. Oh, there's me and Jeff. I went back. Who hadn't been back to his elementary school since he was a kid. We went back to his old neighborhood, and he had a moment just being in the space. So this image was a reference shot I did of the front of his school, PS 99. And I took it, I got on the ground and took this shot facing up because I wanted to reenact what it felt like to be a kid at that age going into that building, not as an adult. So even the perspective and just the scale of things I was thinking about when I did this. Tom, how am I doing? So I need to hurry up.
No, why? No.
I feel like I'm always on this ticking clock, so I'm
I
sorry.
know you got to get to San Diego sooner. Or later.
No, I'm good. I just don't want anybody to fall asleep while I'm talking. So like all of these little things are so important to my storytelling. And you know, it's also great to be when people kind of get the emotional thing I'm trying to strike for. I'm trying to think of all the angles. Here's just a studio shot of me working on the light box. Here are my blue lines. If any of you work in blue pencil, it's an old animator's trick. The coal erase blue pencil, not the non-photo blue. These are just kind of like indigo pencils. I think what's really cool about these is that they're very waxy and they skate across the page. They're very great for loose gestural drawings, and a lot of people draw on blue pencils so then they can tighten it up with graphite, like, you know, just regular #2 pencil or whatever, and then ink. It was a cartooning process that I've been doing for a long time.
Wait, it's not non-photo blue?
No, this is just like, well, with this, Tom, when I scan it in, I can just select that hue and delete it. So the whole non-photo blue thing used to be a trick when you had to shoot your films and all that kind of stuff, but we don't really have to do that anymore. Photoshop is so advanced that you, as long as it's not the same color as the grays of the pencil, you can separate them. So, and here's just some really great shots from that book. These are my original art pages for this. And if you can see in the middle one, this kid, I call him Lemon Head Kid. He was another bully with a weird shaped head. And in this, I'm really trying to just get over the fear of being a little kid growing up in this space where I'm sure a lot of us have had really great, or maybe you don't remember at all, memories from childhood, but a lot of kids did not. So, you know, there's a lot of trauma there. I kind of grew up in a place where I hated going outside because when I had to go outside, I had to fight kids. And that was just part of it, you know. Then you get to play after you fight somebody and they deem you worthy to be on the block, even though you can't do anything about it. It's a lot of that. And here is, I think this is the last page of the first chapter, and this is my inks over there. I had pretty, like, I'll call them like loose inks, I guess, but I was also trying to just go with a mood for this story. Oh, and the last thing, this in that top right panel, that's the mother look. I'm sure everybody's gotten the mother look before. That shuts everything down after you get that stern look. And this is the gray tones that I added to it. The whole book was in black, white, and grayscale, gray tones. So moving on, this is kind of like another part. I went backwards. This is Detective Boogaloo, Hip Hop Cop. I did a web comic for the filmmaker Kevin Smith in the early aughts. This is 2002. My name had got out there enough where people were just asking me to pitch things. And one of Kevin's people was like, hey, we're gonna do a web strip series. You got anything? I was like, I have a story about a breakdancing detective. And they're like, that sounds amazing. So I started doing Detective Boogaloo Hip Hop Cop, which was a story of a man out of time trying to fight the system by becoming a cop. It was well received. I threw everything at the wall with the way I drew it. And it kind of opened another lane in my career. And this is also at the time where I was leaning really heavy into hip hop cartooning. I was feeling like I needed to find an angle. And even on my business cards and things in my early email signatures, it said Jamar Nicholas, hip hop cartoonist, inspired cartoons and urban stuff. And then I realized quickly that I hated, like, I put myself in a box, which is very funny to think about. And then all I would get were people who were like, yo, I need you to do my rap cover to my CD, but we don't want to pay you. Or can you, come graffiti this wall? I'm like, wait, no, I don't do that. And so I stopped calling myself that, but I still had a really fantastic time making this love letter to hip hop. We could talk about this a whole nother time. Here's some sketches. This is what my sketches look like in the tight inks. Color. And I was going all out with this. I was doing like color holds. Like if you look real closely at the characters, like there's no black lines around them. I put a lot of work in these strips, and I was doing not twice up. I would do 2 11x17 pages on top of each other every week for free for this website, just because I had to do it. That was another I had to. You know what I'm saying? There were a couple of I had tos, and I still don't feel comfortable saying no. It's really hard for me to say no to things, and it's probably in your best interest to learn now how to say no to some stuff, especially if it's like your cousin bugging you to do stuff and they don't want to pay you. Like that stuff just eats at your soul. So try to limit how much of that you can do with retaining your sanity. I think, yeah, this is from the original stuff. And then later on, I got asked to do, it came back, like I put it down. 2015, I got contacted by the US Metro. If any of you live in Philly, New York, or Boston, you might have seen this newspaper at the subway station. It was in a green box that you just pull down and have a fresh paper every day. And they were like, hey, we're thinking of doing a comic strip or a comic section. What would you like to do? I was like, I have a story about a breakdancing detective. And they were like, great. So I brought Detective Boogaloo back, and I made it as a daily comic strip. So I was doing these daily, full color, every day of the week in this paper. So this is what that looked like when the digital version. It was an interesting experiment. It was a lot of work. I had to hire a colorist, and my first colorist was an old student of mine who I taught at Moore College of Art. You see how it all comes back around? Who was an intern of mine at one time. I was like, look, I need you to come in. I forgot. I think I paid her pretty well. It's like, I'll pay you every week. And I got to turn these batches in. The whole process that I did that project, and I have a lot of friends who do daily comic strips. It's a grind, you guys. If there is a hard pull in comics, it's doing newspaper strips, because you always have to have. There's no end, right? There's no end. There's no finish line. You just do them, and you always have to have. If you ever heard this term, a buffer. You need a buffer of strips. And you need to be months, plural, ahead at all times. So it may be January and you're doing a Thanksgiving strip just to have ready for when November gets here. And just doing this, I did this for like a year. The art director lived on my shoulder. You got more strips? I need more strips. You got more strips? It was a strip. I just turned in a batch. Yeah, but I need more. And man, it was a fantastic thing to check off of my bucket list, but I don't think I could have kept that up forever. It was a haul. But I also had a readership of 3 million a month. That's a lot of eyeballs. That's like 6 million eyeballs if you have all your eyes. And then remember that image I showed you. Now, people now repurposing the things that I have on the internet. Remember we talked about your public image. All this stuff comes back to haunt you if you're not careful. So, and I think this was from an interview, and this is Leon, and we're going to talk about Leon in a second. Oh, this was MTV.com interviewed me about something for Black History Month, and that's a little bit of a pet peeve I have, you guys. I don't want to talk too much about race tonight, but a lot of times people don't talk to me until it's Black History Month. And then they hit me up. Hey, Jamar, got an opportunity for you. Let me guess, Black History Month. Oh, great. How'd you know? It's kind of not a great thing for me that you kind of, dust me off. because you need something for Black History Month, and then you put me back on the shelf. You know, I'm around the other 11 months of the year, right? And then it gets real uncomfortable. So I'm, you know, yes, I'm happy for the work, but also the, you know, the situation isn't the best for me. So, you know, I do these interviews, but, you know, I'm not a huge fan of it. So real quick, that Leon thing I showed you about started getting me a lot of attention. I won the Dwayne McDuffie Award for Diversity in 2018 for my self-published work, Leon Protected the Playground. That is on the left, one of the very first images I drew of Leon. He looks a lot better now, where I was just trying to figure this out. Basically, it's a story of a 6th grade superhero whose power is, you ready for it? Common sense. It's very rare. This kind of came out of all the time I had been spending doing kids work and just loving that straight connection to kids. I think is really missed by a lot of older cartoonists, or just if you grew up because you need your Batman to have 5 o'clock shadow stubble, and I can count the hairs on his chest and blood, death, chiclet teeth. Like, that's a thing. There are a lot of fans that just that's their Batman. They need that hardcore blood and gut stuff, and we're very fearful that, especially nowadays, kids don't want to read really. They got an iPad, they have a phone, they have, you know, PS5 where the stuff looks real. My video games were like red dots versus the white dots. Pew, pew, pew. But like, why would you want to read anything? That seems dumb now. So we're fighting really hard to make sure kids discover and keep up the joy of reading in the hobby of comics. So I created Leon because no one else had. So basically, it's a middle grade story about a kid who helps his friends out, and he just wants to do the right thing. I know that sounds very corny to any of the Batman fans in the room, but you need a gateway. I think kids need a gateway. I think you need to be able to go into a bookstore and find something like Leon. And even if you don't want to read it, you can give it to your nephew. You can give it to the kid down the street. You know what I'm saying? I think that's how comics are going to have to survive. We all have to be a village to make this stuff work. So from there, I found out that people really like Leon. I was at a comic book convention. This little girl walked in dressed up like Leon. I'm like, wait, what? You know, this is probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen. You can even see my man, Jake Shabbat, in the back, like, yo, what's going on? Nowadays, probably one of the greatest compliments you can get is somebody dressing up like your character, right? It's like, wow, that's still mind blowing to see. And my book hadn't even come out. I just had posters and stuff out of Leon. And, you know, I think this kid picked it up a day before and came back the next day, and a towel wrapped around her neck, and the holster, the utility belt, the whole thing. It's perfect. Chef's kiss. And it made me feel like I'm on the right track. If I'm connecting with kids like this, then I have to be doing something right. And this is some early comics for versions of Leon, where I'm playing with storytelling, and also the fact that this kid is living a superhero life in the middle of the school where not everybody is like him. And this is another strip where I'm playing with kind of just regular kid tropes. Oh, I went back, sorry. Where at the beginning of the school year, even Leon has a new school uniform, and it's a new superhero costume. So I'm kind of playing with all that, kind of like Batman slide down the pole and comes out on the other end in a costume. I'm playing with all those kind of superhero tropes in this book. Blah, blah, blah. And here's now, at this point, I'm working digitally. This is Manga Studio, which is now Clip Studio Paint. Does anybody use Clip Studio in the room? Clip Studio is awesome, and they always have a sale. So just wait 5 minutes and something will be on sale and you can go pick it up. Clip Studio has changed the game. I know a lot of people who are Photoshop diehards. That's fine. A lot of people are iPad users who do amazing things in Procreate. That's cool too. I'm basically a Clip Studio Paint guy, but whatever gets the job done. I still like drawing traditionally. But I also like to add these kind of things to my PowerPoint so people know that I can do both. This is one of my villains from Leon, Broccoli Rob, who was this kid who got cursed by a broccoli wizard because he was too selfish, and now he's cursed. And he has no face. He just makes me laugh every time I see it. So this is like part of the Leon universe where he's just dealing with these super bullies in different fashions. And this is more color work. But this is in Manga Studio. Clip Studio doesn't look so archaic anymore. For any of you guys who draw digitally, I'll be one of those people that says, you don't have to buy a certain brush or download all of these packs. I think people get caught up with trying to find the magic pencil, even the magic whatever, the magic tool. But I think you can make the stuff do whatever you need it to do. So don't get so caught up in trying to find the perfect thing. I think that's an old superstition of cartooning. Like, don't ever update your software when you're in the middle of a job. All of those things that could go wrong will go wrong because you go, oh, look, there's an update. Don't touch it. Don't click on it. Just finish the gig first, and then you do that. So this is the trade dress for Land Protected the Playground. I wound up doing a color version of this, but now I'm self-publishing these graphic novels. This was 144 pages. I've got awards on the back, and it's not comics. And this isn't a knock on comics. I'm still a comic book guy. But now the landscape has changed, and people are really accepting of graphic novels like it's a new thing. And also like they're not comics, I think people got kind of snowed in a weird way that they're like, oh, my kids don't read comics, but I'll get them a graphic novel. So whatever, tomato to me, but I think I've really hit onto something doing this kind of work. And also now I'm dealing with bookstores and librarians and a whole different type of distribution, and not necessarily a comic book shop. Traditionally, a lot of comic book stores don't really cater to kids coming into their places. You might have a shop in your area that has a really great kids section, and that's awesome. But generally, it's like, oh, you got anything for kids? Oh, there's those Archies that are all sunburned over in the corner near the bubblegum machine, and nobody's refilled in 10 years. It's kind of just like an afterthought. You know what I'm saying? But one of my favorite things about graphic novels is just even the spine. Right, you're creating something that has more longevity than a floppy, as they call them in the comic book industry. And again, no knock to either of them, but I think when you, produce a graphic novel to somebody, they kind of look at it differently. I could be wrong, but I think that's just kind of how things are turning these days. But I love the format. I love being able to tell a long form story and then have it collected in something that is going to go on a shelf and not go anywhere. And this was remember my comic book diner buddies I showed you? This was a Kickstarter that's where Leon came from, where we all did a series of books. My buddy John Gallagher, who did Buzzboy, now has a series called Max Meow Cat Crusader at Random House. So he's doing middle grade books, and now so am I. So this was at the house where I'm doing a signing party, getting these things out the door, filling those orders, y'all. It's a great feeling, and again, like this is kind of towards the end of my story here, where I had been going to comic book conventions and kind of doing these sales, these hand-to-hand sales, and I was finding that every time I went to a show, I'd sell out a Leon. I didn't think it was going to happen, but every time I went, I'm out. It would be Saturday night, I'm out of books, and I'd have to put these things on the banner. Sorry, sold out. Sold out? What do you mean? You didn't bring enough books? I didn't think I'd sell all the books. We're not used to selling all the stuff, right? Which started to make me feel like, wow, I think I need a bigger audience. So I started looking into the big publishing houses. I got myself a literary agent, and I started knocking on doors. Oh, there's the hardcover. Oh, isn't that so beautiful? this was at the debut of this Leon book. I got to a point where they celebrated me. There was a celebration that year. Baltimore Comic-Con made Leon the mascot of the show. I did the program. You can see the shirt over there. They put Leon on the shirt. It was a giant thing. My first sale was Kazu Kibuishi came over and was like, "Hey, Jamar, this looks great. I'll take 2. Okay, Kazu, can I sign them for you? I love Amulet." And I just felt like there's something was brewing here, and I felt like I needed to keep my finger on it. And look, there's the kids. This is what I wanted. The kids are there, the parents are interested. It's not like, oh no, put that down. You can't read that. And even to the degree where I love seeing little black kids, little black boys picking this stuff up. I love it when, white families with a baby stroller come over and go, "Oh, what do you think? Should we take this home? Look at this. Leon looks so cool." I feel like I'm winning, and more people are accessing this book. And really all I ever wanted to do was to have people read my stuff. So I felt like things were good. Look, there it is. This is my favorite picture of all time. During this weekend, this kid comes around the corner dressed like Leon, right? And I was just like, yo, what is happening? And there was a murmur through the crowd before I even saw him. And he came around the corner and like somebody pointed him to me. And it was like, that was great. It was a great feeling. This kind of cemented that I was going in the right direction. I don't know the kid. He's not my son. I didn't pay this kid. I don't know him. I haven't seen him since. But this made me feel like, you know what, I really need to get this out into the world. Oh, also DMC from Run DMC is a fan of mine. Just walked around a corner with my shirt on. "Oh, yo, this is you? You did this? Yo, I love this. Oh, holy shit, it's DMC from Run DMC." Things are happening, you guys. It's crazy. And then somebody gave me a little 3D Leon, like, you know what I mean? Like, something's happening here. So I gotta really put my foot on the gas. All right, we're almost done. So from there, now Leon's in all these shops around Philly, across the East Coast. And I find out that, I don't know if you know this, but Comcast, the cable company, their headquarters is in Philadelphia, the evil empire to some of you. In this one comic shop, I find out that one of the execs walks into the store looking for something for the kid and picks up Leon. They get in touch with me and they go, "Wow, you're in Philly too? We'd love for you to come down and talk to us." I wind up going on a tour sponsored through Comcast. They sent me all across the country for a month, where I think they bought like 1,000 books from me, just straight up. And I went to Memphis, I went to Oakland, I went to all these places and just met the people and gave people books and signed stuff and had a great time. I couldn't have applied for something like that. There wasn't an opportunity that was waiting to be taken by somebody. I just, you have to make your own luck sometimes. So from there, and my literary agent, we'll push ahead a little further. Guys, I got a book deal. Scholastic Graphics publishes Jamar Nicholas's Leon graphic novels. I have a multi-book deal at Scholastic Graphics now. I'm very excited. The first book, Leon Extraordinary, will be out in stores October 4th. Go pick it up right now. Go pre-order it right now. Thursday morning, I'm getting on a plane and going to San Diego. I have a lot of programming. I have to promote the book. This is the timeline, you guys. It's all building up. I feel like just being positive, pushing ahead, just making good moves and making clean networking things happen, put you in a good space. Nothing is impossible. So there you go. That's my, This was in Phoenix at a graphics after party where I was like introduced into the public to independent bookstore sellers. I've been on tour already. And there was this great, this great light show with the graphics logo that I had to do something with. So living a dream, you guys. You can do it too. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. I hope I didn't talk too long.
Oh, stop. If you'll stop the screen share we can take some questions. God, I hope you guys have some questions. People are all over the chat, so you don't mind, Jamar, right?
No, let's do it.
And I know at the very least, we got lots of people from Philly and New York who are chiming in about certain things. And I've got questions, but they're just like chit chat.
Yeah.
But so if anybody's got questions, go ahead and ask them. Verdell's got his hand up and Brandon had a question. So let's go to Verdell first. Just turn your mic on and say it. And then we'll go to Brandon, and then we'll go to Kate, and then hands up is good, but you can also say it in the chat and I'll find you. So Verdell, you there?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks a lot for the presentation and encouragement. I think it was really good. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I had a question because I see a lot of, some of the things that I'm trying to accomplish in my story and my drawing and what you're doing. I'm a bit younger than you, and 83, but growing up in the Jersey Shore, been to Philly, New York, all types of things. That is basically, Black kid, Black boy who's like just wants to do the right thing, but dealing with all the other issues and the hero too, but a teenager. I guess my question is, this isn't real. It's like if there could be like a futuristic version of the mid to late 90s, 90s, the mid 90s with better technology.
Gotcha. I'm feeling you.
That's kind of what it is. But how do you make sure that when you create this world, someone like you or I can pick it up and see that, oh wait, I know where this is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just to make sure that even with all the fantasy, that this is rooted in something. Because I'm very intentional. Like, I want someone who looks like me to pick it up. And even though this isn't the real place, they've been there. They've been to school with this teenager. You know what I mean? Even though it's all the fantasy, fighting, even tough stuff, I want them to get that.
I think a lot of that can be accomplished through kind of like the design of your characters, the world building. I'm sure you've all heard that term a million times lately. Like, what is the world you're designing? And more importantly, is it accessible? And I'm saying accessible on a couple of counts. One, like, is it authentic to you and your experience? But also, is there enough of a window that other people will recognize it for themselves, or even if they aren't from it, could still follow along? You know what I'm saying? I'm always afraid that you're speaking so clearly to one group that you're alienating everybody else, right? And I think there's a way to do both, but without kind of losing the soul of your story. I think you can, again, keep it accessible so people can pick it up and go, okay, I get it. Yeah, you know what I mean? Okay, I get it. Is so important to a story. Even if it's alien, even if it's kind of like pseudo real or neo new or something like that. One of my favorite cartoonists is Dawood Anyabwile, who did Brother Man. And if you've never read Brother Man, go find it. He was another guy from Philly who drew a city that looks so much like Philly. I felt like I knew the kids walking down the back of the panel. I was like, holy crap, these kids, I know that guy. It struck a chord with me because I connected from being a Philadelphian and knowing that's how a SEPTA bus looks and that's how buildings look in West Philly, but it was still open enough that somebody who didn't live through that could still follow along. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. I always said that I wanted to be maybe like a Toni Morrison book, that I'm not trying to write this, like it's not written in code, but it's also not written like it's not for who it's for.
Right. No, I understand. I understand. And I want to say, and it's such a kind of sensitive subject, right? Because we're writing for a very specific audience and then a broad audience at the same time. And it feels like it's such a teeter-totter. You do too much of one thing, they fall off the one side. You do too much of the other direction, they don't buy it if they're not from that neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you're really going to have to find a balance. Maybe one of the best things you can do while you're creating this work is to show it to people. it's always great to show it to your peer group or people like that who get what you're saying, but also to show it to people who have never read a comic book before, if it's a comic book, and just see if it's clicking with them. I think doing that kind of test kitchen approach to things will let you know if you're on the right track. Because again, like I talked about, the refrigerator parents, the that's nice dear, everybody in your immediate circle is going to tell you it's dope, right? Because you did it. Yo, man, that's hot. Ah, yeah, you got it. But it's like, yeah, but did you read it? Oh, no, it's great. It's great. You're fine. Like, you're going to have to go outside of and you're probably doing this, I'm not sure, but just kind of go outside of your regular comfort zone of asks and ask people, maybe ask like, I don't know, like the white lady down the block to read your book and see what she thinks. You know what I'm saying? I think all that stuff is really important, especially now. And you're spending all of this time to create a work that I hope you want everybody to read in some fashion, but also for the core of who you're writing it for, that they fall in love with it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool, awesome. We can go to Brandon next, and we'll go to Kate. And if Jen had her hand up, but if Jen wants, and then it's down. So Jen, if you want to come back, let us know. Brandon, go ahead.
Yo, first of all, thanks for doing this. This has been a really dope conversation.
Thank you.
I am also someone who has similar goals and similar aims. So my question was, with your focus on, like a lot of things in childhood, and more specifically like childhood bullying and like navigating that space.
Yeah.
Like how much has telling these stories sort of like spoke to something within you or healed something within you, and like how much of yourself and your own story do you put in your own stories? I've always found that like comics and visual storytelling has been a pretty profound method of like self-healing and sort of like self-understanding. So I wanted to know like how much of that were you consciously thinking about, and how much of that were you putting into your work?
Oh, thank you. That's a great question. And I want to kind of start off by saying that I hope that all of you, if you're doing work where you're collaborating with other people, that you get to curate what you're doing. If you feel like you have to say yes to everything and this doesn't speak to you, you're never going to do a good of job as you would if you really, really connected with the work. Like, probably some of the worst gigs you've ever had was because the money was good. And that was kind of the end of the conversation, right? And you kind of just slog through it, right? But I feel like with Fist Stick Knife Gun, I connected so quickly with that project because I grew up the same way. I'm not a tough dude. I mean, I'm not a punk, but I'm not a tough guy either, right? And I did a lot of things that I don't naturally come easy to me just to survive my environment in West Philly or in Germantown or, other parts of Philly growing up. So to see somebody else go through that, it was a really quick callback where I went first, oh, yo, I remember that happened to me, which connected me to Jeff's story. And then the other part was like, well, holy shit, nothing's changed. That also made me sad. So I felt empowered by doing this work where I could now show a bigger audience this PTSD that we grew up with and how to maybe change it in our own lives. So to that thing, when I started doing my own stuff, like my own projects with Leon, this is a little deep. I hope you guys can follow along with me. I'm sure a lot of you are fans of superheroes. Pop culture is geek culture. That's a fact now. The Marvel movies have been going for 10 plus years already. We're in it. Everybody does the superhero thing. You get it. Captain America, all of that. But I want to kind of put you in a mind space real quick. One of my most intriguing commercials I saw maybe a couple of years ago was a back to school commercial. Follow along with me. A school bus pulls up. Off the school bus jumps Spider-Man, the Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America, and they were just like the new Target sold cosplay costumes, back to school, Hulk hands, Iron Man helmet and all of that, and they all do their poses and all of that, and everybody's like, yay, superheroes. We all celebrate this stuff, but also we also seem to forget that superheroes solve the problems with violence. Right off the bat, that's what it is. So as much as it'd be great to see little Keith, dress up like Wolverine if you went into your kitchen and he's running around the kitchen with 3 knives in his hands. Whoa, 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 put that down. What are you doing? We haven't figured out how to deal with that part of superheroes yet. So I challenge myself. No one has ever said anything to me about this. I've had to pull it out of other people. Did you notice that Leon didn't punch anybody in this book? Or he's trying to figure out how to solve these problems without being violent. And I don't want it to be preachy or be goody-goody, but it's something that I'm trying to be a better storyteller working around this problem. And hopefully that might maybe, start a conversation up the road. But it's made me heal in different ways. It's challenged me in different ways just to be an effective storyteller and not to do a practice do as I say, not as I do type of thing. So like, how am I going to make the stuff for kids? And then you're offended that they got in a fist fight at school because you tell them to punch kids in the face. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I did a lot of healing through that, and I hope I become a better storyteller with these projects. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Amazing, Jamar. Thanks so much. And Sammy in the chat, you're saying Leon is sold out on Amazon. What is that? Can you tell us in the chat what that means? I'm sure that's good news and bad news, potentially. Anyway, and we'll go to Kate. Thanks, Kate. Go ahead and.
Hi, I'm Kate, and thank you so much for your presentation and sharing your story. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kate.
I was especially fascinated by the parts of your talk where you showed us some of your process, like when you showed us the thumbnails with the color-coded areas for dialogue and narration and things like that. That was really interesting to me. And also the part where you showed your art boards with the blue pencil, because that particularly sparked my curiosity, because I'm very focused right now on my process, moving from drawing in my sketchbook to moving my stuff to panels that will play well with industry conventions, or that bust those conventions open if that's what needs to happen. But I want to make that choice thoughtfully. And so I was wondering, in your process, how did you choose the right dimensions for your work? Whether it was trim size or whether it was the artboard that you were using, panel size, things like that.
Okay, that's a great question. I think more often than not now, there's kind of like an industry standard for doing, commercial book work, right? I'm used to doing things at 11 by 17 because that's just been my comic book background. I do things at 11 by 17 in the live art areas like 10 by 13 or something like that, and there's bleed and all that kind of stuff. I think I can get away with things because you can always scan them into Photoshop and kind of make it fit whatever the publisher wants or the art director wants. Usually it's kind of dictated to you. Like, say if you're doing work for other people, they'll say these are the specs, and then it's on you to make sure you land that plane with them. So if it's like, oh well, I usually draw it like this, yeah, but we need it like this. You need to figure that out. But if you're doing your own work, I would say it's are you bringing this to print, or are you going to do it on the web? What's your end result with your project?
I'd like to design so that it could go to print, and ideally so that the way I design it and have all that fun with it while I'm looking at it myself, nobody would have to say to me later, oh, well, this is just, these specs are all wrong, you got to redo this. Like, that's what I want to avoid.
Well, I would say
if I should ever be that fortunate.
Well, I would say right now, if it's your work, you can do whatever you want.
Yes.
Even with print on demand, like Create Space is a great thing. It's Create Space is like an Amazon-led print on demand service. Even what is it? Oh man, it just fell out of my head. There's another service where you can print your own books. And if you go to even CreateSpace, you can download kind of like a spec sheet. Like this is usually how people send us files. And you can get that information ahead of time and go, oh, well, they usually print things at 9x6. If I draw my stuff this big, I'll need to reduce it to this, or maybe I'll just draw it at 9x6, and then kind of meet in the middle, if that makes sense. I think it's good for you to know the end result of what you're trying to do before you worry too much about that. If you're just doing it to do it for S&Gs, then it doesn't matter. But if you're doing it for print for somebody else, you need to find out what they want. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cool, Kate. And seriously, Jamar, it sounds like the last copies of Leon #1 are sold out at Amazon, and 2 of our attendees fought over the last copy. You can check it out in the chat. Yeah, well, thank you, but how do we get more, I guess?
Oh, you know what? Leon Protective Playground is out of print.
Oh, now it's out of Amazon even.
It's out of, if you find Leon, it's either a reseller or like, you know, like somebody has them on eBay or something like that.
We saw that giant stack of hardcovers in your PowerPoint.
Yeah, well, those are all, see over there, that's all I have left over there in the background. And it's kind of my deal with Scholastic that they stay out of print until maybe future notice. Maybe we'll renegotiate to have them redo Protector of the Playground. But right now, if you can find it, good luck, because I, you know, they're not in print anymore.
So when did book 1 come out? Just a little.
Protector of the Playground, this is kind of weird, the numbering is a little weird.
Right.
To me, yes, Protector of the Playground is book 1, but as far as Scholastic is concerned, Leon the Extraordinary is their book 1.
Yeah.
So another reason that they're both not in print is because there could be market confusion.
Yeah.
And that's another thing with this deal I have that is very rare, that they usually don't pick up a IP that's already been in print. You know, just because it creates a lot of problems for publishers. But you know, very fortunate to have this deal. So yeah, if you get one, hold on to it.
So you say you have a 3-book deal. Does that mean you're mapping out? Let's just call it book 2 and book 3. Does that mean you're mapping those out now and you got those in your head? And are you?
Yeah. I wrote book 2 already, and that's the rest of my summer is drawing book 2.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's wild, and I'm already, you know, book 3 has already been outlined, and a lot of this stuff was already outlined when I, you know, we approached Scholastic. You know, it's kind of like, these are the ideas for these 3 books. So it was less of, give me a week, let me think about it. It's kind of like I'm already kind of checking off boxes. So now I'm in the middle of drawing #2 already.
And so now that you're drawing #2, what's your pace? Like what's?
Well, this is something that I forget, that I didn't get to. I quit my day job in May. So now this is like full-time author. Remember I said that earlier in the thing. So right now my pace is, I'm doing some pizza math. I don't know if you know about pizza math. It's one of my favorite things. Okay, there's 9 people coming over. How many pizzas do we buy? Well, Johnny eats like 4 slices, but Mary eats 2. I'm basically going backwards with my calendar. Like, what do I need to do every day to hit this number by the end? So right now it's kind of light. I'm thinking I have to do like 2 pages a day, just doable. But if the more that crunches, meaning I have to travel, I have to promote, I have to do these bookstore things, that the number gets tighter. So I'm comfortable with 2 pages right now. Hopefully it will turn into more, but you know how that works. Yeah. You got to do some all-nighters once in a while.
Is that coloring and lettering too? 2 pages?
No, I'm writing, penciling, inking, and then the company takes care of the rest.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, but I'm very involved in it. So there's almost like a director goes to the dailies. You know, like I'm looking at all of the PDFs and going, you know, I don't know. I think that color's off. Can you send that back? So I'm very involved in all of the parts of it.
I can see that. Your colors are very particular, you know, and there's certain places where like I want that whole character to be bluish, and you know, just to fade it into the background and stuff like that. I noticed that. So yeah, you got to get a colorist that you're
Yeah.
comfortable with or whatever.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. That's a great question.
Oh, I want to talk. I want to talk geeky stuff like on the page, but we'll have to do that some other day.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from you all?
Yeah, there's a lot of people talking about trying to find book one. There's
Yeah,
like
now they're
there's like
finding-
a scavenger hunt happening in the chat.
Yeah. Even had somebody say they lived across from that college you worked at, but some people were like, I used to teach in the Bronx and that isn't my school, or it was my school. I don't know. Nora's got a question.
Yeah, Nora, hello.
Hi there, thanks. This is really great. You mentioned a couple of times like apprenticeship and mentorship, and I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anything in particular about that, like the process of finding people? Like, what are you interested in hearing?
I think the process, like what has been like for you as a mentor, and then maybe how to find mentors, something along those lines.
Okay, all right. So if you're someone who is looking to find help for your studio, the first thing you have to do is admit that you have a problem. No, I'm kidding. I think one of the main things you can do is figure out how like the realism of having studio help. And what I'll say by that is you have to be super specific of what you need somebody to help you with. If you are like, I'm drawing this stuff, but I really need somebody to ink it so I can go faster, that's a very specific thing. If it's, I want somebody to bring me a cup of coffee, that's a whole other thing, right? And that's maybe a pie in the sky version of what people think help is. Because even in my, very young past, I don't tell people I have help because they go, oh, you have an assist. Like, I didn't do any of that. I didn't make any of those motions. You did that, but it's just like, well, what does this person do? Well, they help me book events. Sometimes they do paperwork. There's a lot of administrative stuff. And in my first book, Sandra did the coloring. So if any of you lucky people got Protector of the Playground, you'll see another name in there as color. That was Sandra who did that. I'm very fortunate that, she's really talented with that. But if that wasn't a skill set, it's really unfair of me to make someone do that, because then you're going to deal with the ramifications of just trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, if that makes sense. So getting help means you need to know exactly what you need help with. Now, the way you go and find this is probably easier than you think. If you have access to a college near you, really it'd be great if it was an art school, but sometimes that's not exactly what you need. Sometimes you just need help with making your day make sense. So I've found some of my best assistants have been business majors. They're not sweeping the floor in the background. They're not picking up lunch. They're doing the accounting. Oh, Jamar, where are the receipts for this? You paid for this with the card, but I don't know the receipt. Oh, shit. Yeah, thanks. Here you go. That helps me a lot versus somebody like erasing a page that I did. You know what I'm saying? So you have to ask yourself some more questions before you really dig into that. Now, the teacher part of that is whoever you're bringing in is not going to know how to help you until you teach them. If you don't have the personality for it, because not everybody can teach. Not everybody wants to teach. A lot of people don't have patience for somebody in their way, right? Tom, I'm sure you know about this. Hey, you should really get some help. Man, by the time I teach them how to do it, I could have did it myself. That's a thing. It happens all the time. So you have to really kind of have a conversation with yourself about what exactly you're looking for. College, you can register yourself as a business and call up your local college and say, hey, I run a studio outside the wall. I need an intern. Oh, okay. Is it paid or unpaid? Unpaid. All right. Well, here's a list. Oh, holy shit. I've got 10 kids who want to work in my studio. How did that happen? You just have to kind of like, look into the opportunities around you. I think also being able to teach, again, as I said, it'll be great to bring these people in, but you're going to have to teach them your system. You're gonna have to teach them how to do things. You can't yell at them. You can't make them get you coffee or fluff your pillow, all that kind of stuff. You just have to, really be by the book, and hopefully you'll have a great time and a great relationship, and they'll learn something too. I hope I answered that.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much.
And there's a million ways to find that also. Like you can ask your aunt if she retired, she was an accountant. That's fantastic. You want to help me with my books? It doesn't have to always be somebody you don't know.
Cool. Okay. So Michael's got his hand up. Let's maybe make this the last question. Let Jamar pack for San Diego.
Oh, I'm good. But yeah, we can keep going.
Okay.
We go to 10 if anybody wants to keep talking.
Right. I think, well, let's see what Michael.
Yeah, let's see what Michael says.
Yeah.
Hi, Jamar. First of all, thank you. This was so inspiring. I have a two-part question.
Sure.
I wrote it down just so I wouldn't ramble because I'm a big rambler.
Yeah, cheers.
Fist, stick, knife, gun. Was this an adaptation or a personal story or both? Because it sounded like you were, it was infused with some personal memories too.
Yeah, so it was an adaptation. So the writer of the memoir, Jeff Canada, told this story, and the publisher of the original book came in and asked me if I could adapt it. So the thing that blurs the lines is that, and this is interesting, what I tried to do in the book is draw this book with a character that wasn't necessarily Jeff. It wasn't necessarily this person that you have to know, this is this guy. It's not like I'm doing a Abe Lincoln adaptation, you know what I mean? It's got a stove top hat and all that. I just wanted more for you to connect to the story of a scared boy who has to grow up in a really hostile environment. It's less about this dude's name and more about the emotions that go around with it. That's what I connected to. So it's, sometimes the guy's name is the last thing to come up in the process. And people have said, hey, Jamar, I read that. It's a shame that happened to you. Like, no, you missed it. I'm not Jeff. So sometimes I had to like kind of explain what happened there. But yeah, it is an adaptation of Jeff's story.
But, and the second part is sort of related, because when you were talking about designing characters, and I think it was on that project, you were talking about an element was drawn from memory, because this is what I'm doing now. I'm working on a memoir about childhood. I'm drawing on memories that are over 50 years old. They're really murky, but I'm finding like I'll remember a visual detail and add it to the character, look at the character, remember something else. Could you speak to creating a character design? It's communicating an emotion, but it's also, or an attitude, but also filling in memories, because that was so fascinating to me, and I'm struggling through that right now.
Oh, thanks. Well, I think one of the things that really helps with that is reference, and also I said it to somebody else's question, accessibility. So I'll just kind of make something up real quick if you can humor me. So Georgie, we grew up with Georgie. Georgie lived on our block, and he was like a really tall kid with like a dirt lip and like a rat tail. And everybody used to punch him in the stomach, and Georgie didn't really like it much, but we all just he was the punching bag. In my mind, it's less about that you got the memory of what Georgie looked like to you, and more about like, what can you draw out of this character that would make somebody else feel for him? You know what I mean? So maybe in real life, Georgie was like not a gangly 6'2" kid, but in your book he is. Just for like to put another emotional anchor on it. And these are almost like hacks. If you've ever seen, I'll try to stay on topic here, on the internet, they have like a silhouette of all these cartoon characters. Can you guess what character this is? Oh, that's Popeye. Oh, that's Roadrunner. Oh, that's Bart Simpson. Like you're kind of creating a visual shorthand of these characters to make people connect to them. You don't even need to see who they are, you know who it is. So maybe in your story, Georgie is a larger than life, kind of like bent over, he's so tall kid who just gets abused by everybody on the block. People can connect to that because maybe they knew somebody like that. But it's not super important that you got the mole on Georgie's face, right, that you recall. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mhm.
No, go ahead.
No, I mean, it sounds like you're saying separate the emotional details from, trying to do a photo accurate representation of the character.
Right.
And maybe don't be afraid to exaggerate, to communicate.
You said that better than I could. Yes. Yeah.
No, I'm figuring this out. I've never done this before. So.
Yeah. I mean, and I've read a million graphic novels where there's always the spread of the Polaroid, where these really realistic images of a character that somebody's drawing from their memory, or maybe they're actually drawing it from a photo in their studio. Like, this means a lot to the artist. I don't know if I connect to that. Like, it's so personal. I don't feel like I'm accessing it, but I know it's important to them. It's like if you went into your friend's house and there's pictures of their family all over the wall, but you don't know who these people are, but you know that it's important to them, and I'll give them that respect. But I have to make up my own story about them if I don't know it, if that makes sense.
It does. It sounds like separate what's important to you versus what's going to be important to the audience. What are they going to be able to hook into?
Right, or the story. What's important to the story?
Yeah. Oh man, so helpful.
I'm glad. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jamar. We're getting a lot of that in the chat too. I mean, the people who are like signing off, they're saying this was so helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And really rich and just really wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, well, Tom, if you want to wrap it up, we can wrap it up. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really am concerned. Like, I didn't know you were going to San Diego this week. I would have.
Oh, it's all good. Like, I slotted this on my calendar.
Okay.
If there's any other questions, I know people are trying to go eat dinner or
everybody's like,
go to the club or whatever they're going to do next, but I'm good.
Ina says, such good energy. Your public face is a success. Sammy says, this has been amazing, so inspiring.
Thank you.
Says, thank you. All right, so yeah, just check the chat. It's just everyone's really super happy.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Susan says we love the geeky details. So someday I will, I'll ask you about some of those things, because some of those pages were going by. I was like, look at the way he spotted blacks on that. I want to ask him, but I didn't want to like get.
Oh, yeah, we have to do it again, Tom.
Right. And are you going to do you're going to do the Thursday things when you get back?
Oh yeah, so let me.
You're not too deep in book 2 production or anything.
No, I'm going to still try to do those. So what Tom's referring to is one of the, besides the pencil to pencil thing, I do a thing called Coffee Break with JN every Thursday. I'm on YouTube. And if you go to YouTube and just type in Coffee Break with JN, not Jamar, JN, my initials, that'll pop up. I do a live stream that lasts an hour where I drink a cup of coffee and just talk to whoever shows up on the chat. It's really fun. We have a cast of regulars. It's really cool. And also, I'm all on the socials too. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, ..
And Protector of the Playground is sold out. We've got the last copies, so we'll be scrambling. They'll be fighting in the SAW community for those last copies. Maybe we'll do round robin, mailing it to each other or something. Like,
yeah, and let me know. Maybe Tom, we could do this because I have like 1 or 2 copies. Maybe I can do like a little raffle thing for your people. Oh. Yeah, I have some posters. I have some old Protector of the Playground posters. I'll make a fat pack for you. We'll figure that out.
All right, let's think about that. And I'm loving that drawing in the back behind your left shoulder.
Oh,
this? Yeah, what is that?
Oh, thank you. This is that's the poster from that solo show I told you about in the chat. I mean, that's from Fistic Knife Gun. That's one of the pages where little Jeff is just lost in a sea of black faces. It's pretty strong. It's a strong image. It's one of my favorite.
Wow.
It's kind of like my Romita Heads, my John Romita Heads picture. But I thought it was really strong. If you read the book, you'll see that page.
All right. Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Everyone really appreciated this.
Thank you so much. I hope you guys follow me on the socials. I'd love to see you and keep the conversation going. So thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you, Tom. Thank you to the SAW community.
Take your mic off and just give them a holler on the way out. October 4th, you said the book is out?
October 4th.
And the sad thing is like if you pre-order from Amazon, that makes Jamar's publisher happy. you know, even though we don't like Amazon, or maybe you do, I don't know. But
Well, or hold on. So, but you can also, you can get Leon wherever books are sold. It's crazy. So you can go Walmart, Target, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookshop.org, your local, go to your local mom and pop bookstore and ask for it. The reach is very wide, so you don't have to go to Amazon if you don't want to.
cool. Okay. All right, Jamar, thanks. Have a great time in San
Thank you.
Diego.
Thank
Tell-
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one. Good luck at San
Wonderful
Diego.
evening.
Thank you. Good night, guys.
Good night.
The spotlight. All right.
Good night. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Jamar.